Hey friends, it's Lily and thanks for joining me. Today we're going to talk about something super exciting. It's one of my most favorite things in the whole wide world, and that is single stitch finger crochet. See? I heart it. Before we get started though, I want to show you something really exciting, and it'll help you understand as to why today is such a fine day to stay inside and crochet. So follow me. Excuse my mess. There's my kitty cat Wednesday. Say hi, Wednesday. She's shy. Let's take a look outside here. What do we see? We see snow. This is Alabama, and it snowed, and that's a really big deal. And if you're from further up north, you're probably laughing at me because this is like 1.5 inches of snow, but by Alabama standards this is a blizzard in a state of emergency and everybody's freaking out and there's mass chaos. So your best bet on a day like this in Alabama is to stay inside and finger crochet with me. So let's get started. Back in front of me here you see a sample of single stitch finger crochet. This is actually the first crochet project I ever tackled, and I went a little bit ambitious and made a blanket. Each of these stripes is actually one entire skein of yarn. So as you can see, I haven't made it very far. Yarn's kind of expensive, especially this stuff. So this is something I'm kind of working on as I go when I have time and the money and you know, can take the time to work on it. It's going to be an ongoing project. But this is an example of what we're working on today could look like. I'll put that aside. For today's project, all you're going to need is one skein of super bulky yarn. The particular brand I'm using, Lion Brand Hometown USA. And as you can see here, super bulky, 6. And if we were using a crochet hook, this label suggests we use a size N, but we're using our fingers because they're just as awesome as a crochet hook. And the color here, which is a really pretty, like medium green, I love it. See, it's called Oklahoma City Green, and so shout out to all my friends in Oklahoma City. Hopefully it's warmer there than it is here, but I seriously doubt that because according to the weatherman, the entirety of the U.S., except for maybe Florida, is an ice cube right now. So stay inside, stay warm, and crochet with me. And you'll also need a pair of scissors when you finish. And of course, your fingers ready to work. So we're going to start by finding the end of our yarn, pulling a few lengths out. I've already played with this yarn a little bit, so this isn't what a brand new skein of yarn will look like, but you get the idea. And we're going to start this project with a slip knot. Not every project will start with a slip knot. Some projects will start with a magic ring, depending on what you're doing, but we're going to start with a slip knot. There are lots of different ways to make them. My method is maybe a little bit different than what you've seen, or it could be what you prefer to do, or if you've never done it before. I think this is a way, I don't know, I just think this is a way anyone with any level of experience can make a slip knot. So we're going to grab our yarn like so, holding it with these 3 fingers. We've got maybe a foot of a tail here. We're going to wrap it around our index finger one time, and then we're just going to pinch that loop and pull it off of our finger, keeping the loop intact. And we're going to take our tail here, put it behind our loop, and you can kind of see it through the hole. See it? Hi, tail. And we're just going to press it up to the back of the loop and push it through. A little pinch through. Not going to pull it all the way through, just this little pinch here. And then still holding onto our working yarn, we're going to pull it tight. And there's our slip knot. Really easy, really simple. And in case you have any doubts as to whether or not you've done this correctly, give it a tug and it'll come right out. If it doesn't come right out, you've made some other kind of knot that probably isn't ideal for crochet, but good job on making knots. Let's do it one more time. I'll do it slow so you can see what I'm doing. Wrap it around, slip it off, tail behind it, push through, pull the working yarn tight, and there we go. There's our slip knot. And let's say, for example's sake, if you wanted to, you can make one scarf with this whole skein of yarn. You can make one reasonably sized scarf, really comfy obviously with the super bulky stuff, with just one skein of yarn. So this is kind of a cool project. But if you'd like, you can stop after a few rows if you're just doing this to get a feel for crochet and have another project in mind that you want to try. So we're just going to make a little blot here. But this project is going to start with a chain. And your chain will dictate the width of your work, of the piece that you're working on. The blanket that I showed you, the chain is probably as long as I am tall. That doesn't say a whole lot for the width. Obviously, I'm not very tall. But you don't, like if we were going to make a scarf, you don't want a chain that long because, you know, the base of a scarf isn't 5 feet wide. It's, you know, maybe a foot, maybe even shorter. So we're going to chain, I don't know, a little less than a foot for this project. So holding our knot here, our slip knot, with our right hand, we're going to pull up this loop enough, but be careful not to pull it all the way out. That's why maybe it's a good idea to leave a longer chain. And you want this loop to be big enough for you to put your finger, your index finger, and your thumb into. So we've got like a little lobster claw here going on. We're going to put our index finger and our thumb through our loop, like so. And we're going to grab our working yarn. And holding the knot and the tail, while holding the tail, we're going to pull. And that's our first chain stitch. It looks just like a knot, but you'll get a better idea of what it's supposed to look like when we chain a few more. So pull it out a little bit so we have enough room for our index and our thumb. We're going to do it again. This is really simple. What's cool about this to me is that it always reminds me of my dad. My dad actually taught me how to crochet a chain using this method, and his dad taught him that. So I think that's kind of cool. My dad knows the basics of crochet. Pretty much everyone in my family does, with the exception of my brother, who's a computer game wizard and isn't interested in silly things like this, but no doubt he could do it if he wanted to. Anybody could. So there's our first two. It looks kind of like a braid. I think it's pretty, like a pretty little braid. And for finger crochet, you want to keep in mind that you're going to want to work your fingers back into this row when we start our first row of single crochet stitches. So you might want to make them a little bit loose. So when we start the next row, you'll be able to wedge your finger in there. If you get it too tight, it's going to be really hard to work with. And as it is, the first row working into the chain is a little bit hard to work into. It gets easier after that, but the first chain is, or the first row is always a little bit awkward. So let's just keep going with our chain here. And it's always a good idea to keep count how many stitches you've done, just for consistency's sake. As you do a row, count your stitches so you know that you haven't skipped one or maybe added in something extra, and that way you have a nice consistent work instead of something that's going to be wavy and crazy looking. So let's keep rocking on. We've got 2 chain stitches, 3, and notice each time I'm going to pull my working yarn just to make the loop more manageable. Because if you don't, you're going to end up with a loop like this big, and you know, you'll have your whole hand in there and it'll be all crazy and, you know, messy. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I think that's a good width. I'm going to stop there. So when you get to the length you desire, this is maybe 6, 7 inches. I'm not really sure. I'm not a good measuring eyeballer. I don't even know what that means. Okay. But anyway, when you get to the length you want, you always want to go one more. And when we do our second row of single crochet stitches, you'll understand why. Because when you go up to the next row, you always want to chain 1 at the end of your row, because that is what will make your work taller. That chain 1 makes it taller. So when you get to the end of every row, you always turn your work. We're going to be working from right to left. And unfortunately, I'm not ambidextrous or skilled enough to do tutorials for my left-handed friends. I really hate that. I'd love to get to that point someday, and hopefully I will, but for now, this is for my right-handed friends. Alright, and so here you see we have this really pretty braidy looking chain thing. It looks different on the top and bottom. On the back, on the bottom, whatever you want to call it, you'll notice we have 3 loops. We have a top loop, a middle loop, this right here, and a bottom loop right here. We're going to be working our single crochet stitches into this top loop right here. And you don't want to work into the chain that we just made that our yarn's coming out of, because you'll just undo what you just did, and we don't want to do that. We're going to progress. So we're going to work into this stitch right here. So we're going to pull that up a little bit, keeping this on our finger, our crochet hook, you know, finger magic. Pull this up a little bit so we have enough room to stick our finger through there. So we're going to put our finger in, and now we have 2 loops on our finger. We're going to take our working yarn and yarn over the top of our finger. We're not going to wrap it. We're just going to lay it over the top of our finger. And we're going to lift up this middle loop here, and we're just going to wedge our working yarn underneath it and just kind of switch places with them. Pull that loop off your finger, and now you have 2 again. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to yarn over the top of our finger, but this time we're going to lift up both of these loops, and we're going to wedge our working yarn underneath both of them. Grab it there and slip these off your finger, and we have 1 loop. And congratulations, you've just completed your first single crochet stitch. It's not going to look super awesome because it's the first stitch. It's kind of awkward looking. So let's move on to the second one. And we're going to work into, again, this top stitch here. We're not going to work into this. This is a gap. This is what we just worked with. We're not going to work into that. That'll mess things up. We're going to work into this very next stitch. So we've got our loop on our finger. I'll pull this up. Stick our finger in there. We've got 2 loops on our finger. Yarn over the top. We'll lift this middle piece up, and then we're going to wedge that underneath. Hold on to it and pull that off of our finger. And now we have 2 on our finger again. Yarn over. Wedge it under both of those pieces. Pull them off your finger, and you have 1 loop. And now you have 2 single crochet stitches. And you see we're making these. It looks kind of like our chain. It's a little bit looser. We're going to do this again. We're not working into this space here, we're working into this. And there's our third. We're going to keep rocking on just like this until we get to the end. So meet me at the end, and I'll show you how to start your next row of single crochet stitches. Alright, hopefully you're getting close to the end. If you've already made it to the end, great job. You learn fast. But for those of you who haven't quite made it there, I'm going to finish this out with you. Don't get frustrated with this first row, this chain row. It's really frustrating to work into. It's kind of tight, it's awkward, and I promise you it's only going to get easier from here. The remaining rows are going to be a lot easier to work into. Not as tedious. You can kind of zone out actually and work into it when you get comfortable enough. So anyway, let's finish out here. If you hear any noises in the background, I'm really sorry. I live in a giant apartment complex outside of the city, and my neighbors are insane. All of them. They're all crazy. They're all crazy. And the guy next door is like yelling at his kid and his girlfriend, and he's like a raging alcoholic, and it's crazy. Here's some crazy stuff. So sorry if you hear anything ridiculous happening in the background. That's what's going on. I hope you don't live in an apartment complex, and if you do, it's not as crazy as mine. One day though, one day we'll have our cabin in the woods, and it'll be nice and quiet. Here's our last stitch. The last one is always really hard to work into because it's tight and it's kind of hard to find. It's easy to miss, easy to skip over, but that's why keeping track of the number of stitches you've done is always a good idea. So you make sure you don't miss that last one. And that's the one that'll make your work all wavy and wiggly if you skip it. Oops, see, I'm having a hard time with this last one too. Alright, it's our first row of single crochet stitches. Hopefully your work looks something like this. And remember what I said, when you get to the end of every row, you're always going to chain 1 for single crochet. For other stitches, you're going to chain 2 or 3 or, you know, whatever that stitch calls for. We'll get to that eventually. But for this, we're just going to chain 1. So remember how we chained? Index, thumb through our loop. We're going to grab our working yarn and pull. There's our chain 1. And remember, at the end of every row, we always turn our work. Kind of cool looking. And to start this next row, okay, we're going to do something maybe not, well, kind of atypical for single crochet projects, but this is finger crochet, so for simplicity's sake, we're going to do something a little bit different. Most of the time for a single crochet project, you'll be working, once you get through that chain row, into both of these loops, both legs of your V's here. See, we got kind of a series of V's. You'll be working into both of them. But for simplicity's sake, and because honestly I just really like the look of it, you kind of get this sweatery look, these ridges on your work, we're only going to be working into this leg, this bottom leg of the V. And it's a lot easier to work into than both of them, especially with your fingers. I have munchkin fingers, so this is really easy for me. Alright, so just like we did on our first row, we're going to pull up this loop. Remember, not both, just this one that's closest to you, very top loop. Pull it up with this loop on our finger. We're going to stick our finger in there. We've got our 2 loops. And just like before, yarn over the top of our finger, wedge it under that loop. Got 2 on our finger again. Yarn over the top, wedge it through both, pull those loops off your finger, and there we go. First stitch. Let's do it again. Pull up this loop, put your finger through, yarn over, tuck it in, 2 loops on our finger, yarn over, tuck it under both. There we go. And we're going to keep doing this until we get to the end of our row. And then we're just going to repeat the process over and over and over until we get the length that we want for our work. So I'm going to finish this row, do a few more, and then I'm going to show you how to finish your work. So meet me back here in a few minutes, or whenever it is that you get to the length that you want, and I'll show you how to finish your work. Okay, I'm back before I said I would begin. That's because I want to show you how to move up to the next row from this second row of single crochet stitches, since it's a little bit different. So here's our last stitch. It doesn't look like the rest of them. It's not as obvious, but you obviously are not at the end because you've got this fabric to work into. So I'm going to pull out this loop, finger in, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2, have 1 loop on our finger, obviously at the end of that row because there's nothing protruding out from here. We're going to chain 1, that's what we always do, and turn our work. And look into this loop. Alright, so I've done another row. Let's say I have a whole scarf here though, and I'm done with it. I'm at the end of my skein, or it's as long as I want it to be. This is how you're going to finish your work. Now I'm not going to cut this yarn because I have other plans for it, but you would cut your yarn, leave, a good bit of tail, because what you want to do with it to keep your work from unraveling is you're going to weave this tail into your work, and it's going to be hidden. You're not going to know it was even there. It'll look really nice and seamless. So anyway, you're going to cut that, put your finger through your loop, and just pull until the cut end comes all the way through it and you just have one continuous strand. And so I'm going to turn this over and use my tail as an example to show you how to weave. Really, there's no finite method for weaving. You just do what you can, where you can find a good place to weave it. So for this chain, we're just going to loop it through here. Just kind of winding it into that chain, tucking it in and hiding it. And you would do this exact same thing, similar method up here. You would just loop it in, weave it into these, like what I'm doing here. And just keep going. Tuck it in, hide it. And there we go. Can't really tell it was even ever there. And congratulations, friends, you've just finger crocheted single stitch your first project. I hope you had fun. I hope it didn't frustrate you too bad. I know it took me a few tries to get the hang of it, but once I got it, I really, really loved it. And I think it's something really relaxing and fun, and it's a great way to pass the time and make something simple and fast for a friend or for yourself. Yeah, finger crochet. Love it.